So this is a quick part 2 to for loops. So here we're going to look at an array. This array says red, green, yellow. Let's just say I want to list out red, green, yellow next to each other, right? The way that I would do that is I would write for, say, just like we did before, var I equals 0, and then set the condition, right? I less than, and now here's the interesting part. I could type 3 because I know it's red, green, yellow, and say I and I plus plus, and that's that, right? And then what I need to do is I would say, let's say document.write, and I am going to write out colors. And if you remember, right, what does, how do you actually get things to, how do you actually grab specific elements within an array, like values within an array? You have to use the index, right? This is index 0, index 1, index 2. And if you notice here now it says red, green, yellow. Let's just add a little space right here. Plus, oops, a little space. And now there's red, green, yellow. Okay? So why does this work? If you remember from one of the last videos, in order to pull up any one of these, we'll just do console .log, and I say colors 0 equals 0. Console, you'll see it says red, right? If I say 1, you'll see it says green. And if I say 2, you'll see it says yellow. Now, if you think about what this for loop is doing, this I is iterating from 0 to 1 to 2, right? And that means it's going 0, 1, 2. And that's why you see red, green, yellow. And this is doing it through the for loop. All right, so that makes sense. The other thing that I wanted to show was, what was the other thing that I wanted to show? So that shows that the other thing is, let's say we have something a little more complex. All right, so here, now I have a user, right? And this user, Leonardo da Vinci, he has hobbies. He likes to paint, sculpt, invent, and do math, right? So what I'd like to write out is something to the effect of, say, let's take this out. Let's just think this through, right? We're going to say Leonardo da Vinci, oops. Actually, you know what? Let's just take this out. So what I basically want to say is I want to say first name. So first name, right? First name, last name. Leonardo da Vinci likes to paint, sculpt, invent, and do math. Okay? So that's what we want to do. So how do we do that? Let's figure this out here. We're going to write, let's move some of this stuff here. And my computer is going extremely slow. Okay, so we're going to say document.write. And we're going to say, we'll just write it out. First thing that we want to say is we want to say Leonardo da Vinci. So Leonardo is first name. Okay. It helps if you spell it correctly. If you got a T. Okay, so now we're up to the first thing. So You should see Leonardo show up in a second. It's not showing up. Why isn't that showing up? Oh, so the reason why it's not showing up is because this is an object. Silly me. So we want to make sure it's user, right? So here we want to say user dot first name. Now you see Leonardo, right? And then I want to put a little space, right? So to do a space, we're going to add a little space inside of a quote, and then I'm going to create another plus sign because I want to add in another. I want to add in last name. So user dot last name. And now that should say Leonardo da Vinci. Okay. So Leonardo da Vinci likes to. Okay. Let's go plus. And we're going to add a little space. Throwing space in front of the L. Likes to. Right? And now here it gets interesting, right? How do I type in, how do I say paint, sculpt, invent, and do math? All right, so this is going to be a little tricky because I can't just type it in here because that wouldn't work. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to create here, and I'll write, we'll just say we're going to call this string. All right. So we're going to store this in the variable because I'm going to need to do a little bit of work to finish off this sentence. It's not as easy as I thought it would be, right? Because now I stored it there, and what I'm going to need to do now is I'm going to need to add each part of this into my sentence, right? And then I will reprint my sentence. So let's move this document out right. Let's move it underneath the string. I have to do a little bit of work. And eventually it'll paste. Let's get rid of this. And we're just going to print out, string, right? And that should print out Leonardo da Vinci likes to. And now we're going to have to insert, we're going to have to not insert, but we're going to have to add additional parts to this string. And to do that, we're going to have to loop that hobbies. And we did the loop before. So for loop, right? And the way this is going to work is I'm going to do something different here this time. Before, if you remember, I said I just added a number 3, right? This time I'm going to do something a little different, and I'm going, because let's just say Leonardo da Vinci is going to add more hobbies or remove some hobbies as we go. I will never really know that it's what number that is, like how many hobbies. So I'm going to make it a little more dynamic and say var I starts with 0, but this time I is less than, and then I look at the array. The array is inside of user, so user dot hobbies dot length. And what this is going to tell me, this is the length of the array, I plus plus, right? And now what I can do with string is I could add, so I get string here, and I'm going to say plus equals, and this is basically saying I'm going to add something on top of this string. But before I do that, we can say, just to not make it more confusing, say string equals string, plus user hobbies, and then add in the array, little brackets, and I. All right, so this is going to take a little bit of explanation. But here we're going to just add one more thing. If you notice here, all these are really close together, so we're going to add a little space to this too. We're going to say plus, and then quote with a space. Right? And actually, what we want is a comma. Right? And you'll see all the commas show up. Okay, so now let's break this apart a little bit. All right. So we are starting off with a string here, right? Well, we have this, given this this object, we're starting off with a string, the things that are known. User first name, so user first name Leonardo, and then we add a space. User last name Da Vinci, and then we say links, let's take that N off, likes to, right? And now we need to add all the things that Leonardo likes. And on top of that, we have to add commas, so it's proper grammar. And in order to do that, we're going to create a loop, right? And we're going to have it loop the length of the array hobbies. So if I were to go here and I were to say, let's just clear this console, so empty. Okay, if I were to say console.log and I were to put in users.hobbies.length, you should see, I spelled everything right. User, okay, take the S out, and there you see it. So 4, because 1, 2, 3, 4. So user.hobbies.length is going to give me the length of this array. Okay, so for arrays, all you need to do is say .length. This particular array happens to be inside of this object, which is why it's user.hobbies.length. Okay, and now in here, what this basically is telling you is I is less than 4, because user.hobbies.length equals 4. But if I were to add an additional one, let's just say Da Vinci also liked, he was a Renaissance man, so we'll say piano. Oops, I declared a piano. Now it's going to come in here and it's going to work. So now user.length is 5. It's no longer 4, right? And that's why you want to use .length, because you don't. It's quite possible you're not going to know offhand how many things are going to be here. Okay, so that's that. Now the one thing that you notice here is that there is a little. I want this to be a period, right? So now what do I do? Like, how do I only show commas as long as it's not the last comma? I want the last comma to be, I want it to be a period. Okay, so let's figure this out a little bit. So what we know is that the period, we don't want the last comma. So how would we know if we're on our last loop? And the way we would know that we're on our last loop is because we know when the last loop is. We know that the last loop is going to be when I is less than user length. So let's just do a quick little console.log, right? And we're going to put I in there. So when does I stop? Notice here it goes 0 because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Because it started with 0, so it's not. That's why it's not going to 5. So that means that when so we have to create a condition here. If so we're going to take out this comma. There'd be no commas. And we're going to say if a condition is true, and that condition is going to be if I is less than user.hobbies.length, right? And we're going to leave it at that for now, but I'll show you what we're going to need to do. We're going to need to add an additional thing here, right? The string, because right now string equals string plus user hobby. So that's adding this string is now is going to be added to the other, to this string, and that it's really it gets really confusing, which is why one of the things that you could do to make this less confusing is instead of saying string, like if you say like 1 equals 1 plus 1, that's 2, and if 1 equals 1, alright, forget, I don't want to confuse you more than that. But what you could do is just remove this string here, and you can just add a plus sign. Sorry. Okay, so this means the same exact thing. So instead of saying string equals string plus user hobbies, you can say string plus equals user hobbies. And that's a little bit easier to read. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have to add additional things onto the string. We're building onto the string, right? So we can grab this string plus equals, and we can add user hobbies. Oh no, I'm sorry. What we're doing here is we're going to add comma, right? A space and a comma. And now we added those commas back in there. Oops, sorry. It's a comma then a space. We added those commas back in there, right? So now DaVinci, like sculpting, events, event, do math. However, we still have that comma in the back, and the reason we have the comma in the back is because we want it not to be user length. However, we want it to be user length -1. Okay? And now that comma should disappear, and we want this to say else, oops, else string plus equals, let's say, alright, now let's see, there's something wrong here. What is going wrong? So unexpected token. What is? Oh, there is I missed a parenthesis, so I didn't like that I was missing a parenthesis there. Okay, so now let's just go through this. I know this is a little confusing, so let's just get rid of this because we don't need it. And we're going to walk through this code nice and slow. Alright, so we started off, let's get rid of this too. And I'll just comment all of this for you. Okay, so this is my object, right? I'm going to go through this object, right? And I'm going to set, because I know the sentence that I want to write. So I want to write first name, last name, likes to, say, array 0, array 1, and etc. Right? This is the sentence that we want to write. So what we know for sure is first name, last name, right? We can just put that off the bat. First name, so we write first name and then we add these little sort of spacers, so we make the little space. So first name, that little space, that's right there, we added it. Last name, space, and then likes to, and then there's where we're stuck, right? So here we're actually not doing this piece here, right? So we're stopping first name, likes to, right? And now here we want to add hobbies one by one to this string, right? And to do that, we're going to use length of user.hobbies array, right? And what this is, so this is saying starting at 0, keep on increment I by 1, so it's got this I++, and do that until you reach the length of the array, right? And that's what array.length is. So now it's adding, right? It's looping, right? Here, first thing that we're doing is we're saying, first thing I want to do is add a hobby, right? So it adds a hobby based on index, on current index, right? So current index of I, right? So I is it starts off at 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then so on, right? And then then we insert I to find insert I to find correct hobby, right? So now we're inserting I in here, right? Now the next thing is we want to, as long as, or if we are not at the last item, add a comma. Else add a period. So if you're not at the last one, add a comma. If you are at the last one, add a period. And that's what this is doing right here, right? And then here, we're just going to say to identify the last item, use total length and subtract 1. Right? So now we use total length, subtract 1, and I'm able to recognize that I've hit the last one and use the period. And definitely use, if you need to figure out what these eyes mean, because it's all, it's not very visible, that's what you use your console for, just like I did. I use that console to be like, okay, I need to decremented by 1. Let me do some math and figure out what this looks like. See it, do it, try it. If it doesn't work, and it probably won't work the first time, figure out, just little by little, try to figure it out. Yeah, so that is how you would write this, this sentence.